How to care for yourself in old age, 6 essential tips, fabulous things for seniors. You've spent years, maybe even decades giving, sacrificing and putting others first. You've built a home, a family, a life filled with responsibilities. But now, as the world quiets around you, a different thought settles in. Who am I beyond what I've done for others? The house that was once filled with laughter now echoes with silence. The days stretch longer, and the calls, the visits, they aren't as frequent as they were. You wonder if you've been left behind while life moves forward without you? If this sounds familiar, you are not alone. Millions feel this way, but few say it out loud. Here's the truth no one tells you. Happiness in old age isn't something that just happens. It's something you create, and it's never too late. In this video, I'll share 6 powerful, life-changing keys that will help you turn these years into some of the most fulfilling of your life. By the end, you won't just be existing, you'll be thriving. So stay with me, because this isn't just a message. This is your wake-up call to start living for yourself. 1. Maintaining a healthy body. The great Greek physician Hippocrates, often called the father of medicine, once said, "A wise man should consider that health is the greatest of human blessings. Let food be your medicine and medicine be your food." In ancient China, Confucius observed, "He who takes no time for health will soon have to make time for illness." And even in America's own history, the great Benjamin Franklin warned, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." Throughout history, sages and scholars have understood one fundamental truth. Without good health, all the riches, wisdom, and experiences in the world become meaningless. But despite this wisdom being known for centuries, many of us take our health for granted until we lose it. If you saw John today, you'd think he had always been a man of discipline. At 69, he walks every morning, keeps a steady diet, and has more energy than people half his age. But just a few years ago, he was a very different man. John spent his life working, he provided for his family, paid the bills, and made sure his children had opportunities he never did. But like many hard-working men of his generation, he neglected himself. Fast food on the go, coffee instead of water. No time for exercise, too busy, too tired. And the weight crept up, the joints started aching, and the sleepless nights became more frequent. He brushed it off. "I'm just getting older, this is normal," he told himself. But then came the moment that changed everything. It was a regular Sunday afternoon. John was playing with his grandson in the yard when suddenly his knees buckled, his chest tightened, the world blurred. In an instant, he collapsed. He woke up in the hospital, staring at the ceiling. His doctor stood beside him, shaking his head. "John, your body has been sending you warnings for years. You ignored them. If you don't make a change now, you may not have many years left to enjoy." For the first time it hit him. All his life he had worked hard to give his family everything, but now, in his weakest moment, he realized he had given them everything except himself. What good was all his sacrifice if he wouldn't be around to enjoy the life he built? John went home that night, determined to change. But change is never easy. The first morning he set his alarm early to take a walk. But his old habits spoke louder than his willpower. "You're too tired. It's cold outside. 1 more hour of sleep won't hurt." The second morning his body groaned in protest as he laced up his sneakers. "What's the point? You're old. You'll never be fit again." The third morning he almost gave up. But then he remembered something his father told him long ago. A man doesn't drown by falling in the water, he drowns by staying there. So John forced himself out the door. The first walk was just 10 minutes. His knees ached, his breath was short, but he kept going, day after day, week after week. One morning he noticed something. He woke up feeling lighter. His joints didn't hurt as much, his energy lasted through the day. For the first time in years, he felt alive. John's journey wasn't about becoming a different person overnight. It was about small, daily choices. He swapped soda for water. He walked instead of sitting all day. He started cooking real meals instead of eating from a package. He chose life over convenience. Months passed, and people started noticing. "Dad, you look great. Grandpa, you're walking faster than me." But the real victory wasn't in how he looked, it was in how he felt. One evening, his grandson ran up to him, laughing, and said, "Grandpa, chase me!" And John did. He ran, not just after his grandson, but toward the life he almost lost. That night he sat on the porch, looking at the stars. He thought back to that hospital bed, to the warning his doctor had given him. If you don't make a change now, you may not have many years left to enjoy. Now John smiled, because he knew he wasn't just living longer. He was living better. John's story is not unique. Every day, thousands of people wake up and realize they've neglected their own health. They want to change, but they believe it's too late. But here's the truth. You don't have to be young to be healthy. You don't have to be an athlete to be strong. You don't have to be perfect to make progress, you just have to start. So ask yourself, are you giving your body the care it deserves? Because your body has been taking care of you for decades. Isn't it time you returned the favor? If you've ever felt like John, tired, drained, like your best years are behind you, I want to hear from you. What is one small step you can take today for your health? Maybe it's drinking more water. Maybe it's taking a short walk. Maybe it's just deciding that you deserve to feel better. Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts, your struggles, or even your victories. Your story might be the inspiration someone else needs to start their own journey. Because remember, it's never too late to start living again. 2. Pursuing your personal interests. The great Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." The American writer Mark Twain echoed this thought. 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. Throughout history, the message remains the same. Life is not meant to be merely endured, but fully experienced. Yet, as we grow older, many of us forget that. We let responsibilities, expectations, and time steal away the things we once loved. But passion is like an ember, buried beneath the ashes. It never truly dies. It waits. Let me tell you about Anna. Anna had always loved to paint. As a child, she would lose herself for hours, her tiny fingers smudged with bright colors as she brought her imagination to life. But life had other plans: marriage, children, work, bills to pay. She had promised herself, "One day, when life slows down, I'll pick up my brushes again." But the years came and went, and that one day never arrived. By the time she turned 65, Anna was retired. Her children were grown. The house that once echoed with laughter was now filled with silence. And with that silence came something unexpected, a sense of loss. She felt like a ghost in her own home, drifting from room to room, wondering where the time had gone. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, she stumbled upon an old wooden box, dusty and forgotten. She opened it and gasped. Inside was a set of paintbrushes, her paintbrushes, the same ones she had tucked away decades ago, thinking she'd return to them soon. She sat there for a long time, holding them in her hands, as a wave of emotions washed over her. How many years had she wasted waiting? That night, for the first time in decades, Anna dipped a brush into paint. At first her hands were unsteady. The colors felt unfamiliar, the strokes hesitant. But as she painted, something incredible happened. She felt alive again. It was as if her younger self had reached through time, whispering, "Welcome back." But Anna's journey wasn't without doubt. When she shared her paintings online, a comment from an old acquaintance made her hesitate. "Isn't it too late to start something new at your age?" That night she almost put the brushes away again, but then she remembered Grandma Moses, who started painting at 78 and became a celebrated artist. She thought of Colonel Sanders, who didn't build KFC until he was 65, and she thought of herself, of the little girl who once painted without fear, before the world told her what she should be doing. Anna decided then and there, "I am not too old, I am still becoming." She joined an art class, made new friends, and even showcased her work in a local gallery. But the most important thing? She stopped waiting for permission to be happy. Anna's story isn't unique. Look around today and you'll see millions of people waiting. Waiting for retirement to finally enjoy life. Waiting for their children to call before they allow themselves joy. Waiting for the right time to start something they love. But the truth is, the right time never comes. Society has trained us to believe that after a certain age we should slow down, step aside, and fade into the background. But why? We don't stop needing passion just because we grow older. We don't stop deserving fulfillment just because we have gray hair. Life doesn't give expiration dates on dreams. So, how do you start? 1. Make time for what you love. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. It doesn't exist. Set aside time today, even if it's just 15 minutes, to do something that brings you joy. 2. Try something new. If you've lost touch with past passions, explore something new. Learn to play an instrument, take up writing, join a book club. Curiosity is the key to staying young. 3. Connect with like-minded people. Finding a community makes all the difference. Shared passions create friendships. Join a local group, an online class, or a club that fuels your interests. Think back. What have you always loved? Maybe it was gardening, maybe it was music, maybe it was writing stories, building things, or dancing when no one was watching. Whatever it was, it's still there. It's been waiting for you. But the question is, will you pick it back up? Or will you let more years slip away? You are never too old to start. You are never too old to feel alive again. Leave a comment below. Tell me, what passion have you put aside? What's one small step you can take today to reclaim it? Because one day, you might look back and realize the best time to start was right now. 3. Securing financial independence. The great American thinker Benjamin Franklin once said, "Beware of little expenses, a small leak will sink a great ship." The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu taught, "He who knows he has enough is rich." And in the Bible, Proverbs 13:22 reminds us, "A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children." Throughout history, wise men have known one thing. Money is not just about wealth, it is about security, dignity, and freedom. But what happens when we give too much, expecting love in return? What happens when we sacrifice our future for others, only to be left with nothing? Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was a provider. From the moment he became a father, he made a silent promise. My children will never struggle like I did. So he worked hard. He picked up extra shifts, skipped vacations, and saved every penny, not for himself, but for them. He paid for their college tuition, he helped them buy their first homes. When his son lost his job, Robert covered the mortgage. When his daughter wanted to start a business, Robert dipped into his savings to fund it. And when he retired at 67, he smiled, thinking, "I have done my duty. My children will always remember what I sacrificed for them." But life has a cruel way of revealing hard truths. One evening, Robert sat at the kitchen table, staring at a pile of unpaid bills. His pension wasn't enough. His savings were gone. He had given everything. When he called his son for help, there was hesitation. "Dad, things are tight right now, maybe next month?" When he asked his daughter, she sighed, "I wish I could, but the business isn't doing well." And that's when it hit him. His children had built their own lives, while he had left himself with nothing. Robert wasn't angry. He had never given with expectations, at least, that's what he told himself. But now, sitting in his empty house, he realized something painful. He had spent his whole life being useful, and now, with no money, no independence, and no way to support himself, he felt forgotten. For years he had thought that love was measured in how much he could give. But love, true love, is not built on financial transactions. It is built on respect, on mutual care, on knowing when to give and when to hold on to enough for yourself. If Robert could go back in time, here's what he would do differently. 1. Save for yourself first. Our financial security should be non-negotiable. If you are stable, you can help others without sacrificing your own future. 2. Plan for unexpected expenses. Life is unpredictable. Medical bills, home repairs, or sudden emergencies can wipe out your savings overnight. Always have a financial safety net. 3. Find ways to generate passive income. Even small streams of income can make a difference. Whether it's renting out a spare room, investing in dividends, or selling handmade crafts, every little bit adds up. 4. Avoid financial dependence on your children. Your kids love you, but they have their own families and struggles. If you are financially independent, your relationships with them will be healthier. 5. Live within your means. Happiness doesn't come from expensive things, it comes from financial peace. Avoid unnecessary debt, downsize if needed, and make smart financial choices. Robert knew he couldn't change the past, but he could change what came next. He downsized, moved into a smaller home that was easier to maintain. He took up a part-time job, not because he had to, but because it gave him purpose. He stopped giving money out of guilt and started setting boundaries. And something strange happened. As he became more independent, his relationship with his children improved. They no longer saw him as someone who would always fix things for them. They saw him as a man with dignity, wisdom, and strength. And for the first time in years, Robert felt whole again. Robert's story isn't unique. In today's world, parents are expected to give, pay for their children's weddings, help with down payments on houses, provide financial support long after their children have become adults. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you give everything away, you are left with nothing. And that doesn't help anyone. Now I want to ask you something. Are you financially secure? Not for your children, not for anyone else, for yourself. If not, what small step can you take today to start securing your financial future? Maybe it's saying no to an unnecessary expense. Maybe it's creating a small savings fund just for you. Maybe it's finding a way to bring in even a little extra income. Whatever it is, take that step, because the best gift you can give your children is the example of a parent who takes care of themselves. I know this is a difficult topic. Money, family, expectations, these things are deeply personal. But I want to hear from you. Have you ever struggled with giving too much? What's one financial lesson you wish you had learned earlier? Leave a comment below. Your story might just help someone else find the strength to take control of their own future. Because at the end of the day, financial independence isn't just about money, it's about dignity, freedom, and the ability to live life on your own terms. 4. Stop comparing yourself to others. The great American president Theodore Roosevelt once said, "Comparison is the thief of joy." The philosopher Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And the American writer Ralph Waldo Emerson warned, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." For thousands of years, wise people have known this truth. When we measure our lives against others, we rob ourselves of happiness. Yet in today's world, with endless social media and constant exposure to other people's perfect lives, comparison has become a silent epidemic. And no one knew this better than Margaret. Margaret was 72. She had a beautiful home, a loving family, and good health. By all accounts, she should have been happy. But every evening after dinner, she would sit in her chair, scrolling through her phone. And with every post she saw, a tiny crack formed in her happiness. A friend's daughter just bought a brand new house, bigger than anything Margaret's kids could afford. Another friend was traveling in Europe, eating at fancy restaurants, living the kind of retirement Margaret once dreamed of. An old acquaintance posted a photo of herself looking youthful and radiant, while Margaret saw only wrinkles when she looked in the mirror. She told herself she was just catching up with people, but deep down she was comparing, and every comparison made her feel smaller. She started feeling bitter, resentful. Why do they have more than I do? Why does aging seem kinder to them than it is to me? Why does their life seem so much happier? She didn't say these thoughts out loud, but they lived inside her, quietly poisoning her joy. Until one day, something changed. Margaret's granddaughter Emma was visiting for the weekend. Emma, just 17, noticed how often Margaret was on her phone. "Grandma, why do you always look sad when you're on Facebook?" Margaret blinked. "I don't look sad," she said. Emma shrugged. "You do. Every time you see a picture, your face changes." Margaret sighed. "Out of the mouths of babes, as they say." She hadn't even realized how obvious it was. Later that night, Margaret thought about what Emma had said. "Why do I let this bother me? I have a good life." But then another thought crept in. Or do I? Maybe my life isn't as good as I thought. She turned off her phone and went to bed with a heavy heart. The next morning, Margaret went for coffee with an old friend, Nancy. Nancy was one of the women who always seemed to have the perfect life online. Flawless pictures, exciting vacations, a picture-perfect family. Margaret hesitated, but then, with a sigh, she asked, "Nancy, can I ask you something? How do you always look so happy? You're always traveling, always doing something exciting? I guess I just feel like my life is so ordinary in comparison." Nancy let out a small laugh, but it wasn't a joyful one. "Margaret, do you know why I travel so much?" she asked. "Because I can't stand being home alone. After my husband passed, I realized I didn't know who I was without him. The trips, They keep me busy. The pictures? They make it seem like I have it all together. But the truth is, when I come home to an empty house, I feel lost." Margaret sat in stunned silence. She had spent all this time envying Nancy's life, and yet Nancy was just as lonely as she was. That was the moment Margaret realized something life-changing. Social media isn't real life. People only post the good parts, the highlights. No one posts the fights, the fears, the insecurities, or the regrets. And yet, she had let herself feel miserable over a carefully filtered version of someone else's life. Margaret decided then and there she was done comparing. She made 4 key changes. 1. She accepted that aging is natural. She stopped looking at wrinkles as something to be ashamed of. Instead, she saw them for what they were: proof of a life well lived. 2. She limited her social media use. She didn't need to see every update, every picture. Instead, she focused on real life, real conversations, and real moments. 3. She practiced daily gratitude. Every morning she wrote down 3 things she was grateful for, and slowly she realized her life was already full of blessings. 4. She stopped measuring happiness by someone else's yardstick. She stopped asking, "Why don't I have that?" and started asking, "What do I have that brings me joy?" And just like that, Margaret found peace. Margaret's story isn't unique. We live in a world where we are constantly bombarded with images of other people's better lives. But here's what no one tells you: comparison is a lie. Every single person you envy has struggles you don't see. That friend with the perfect marriage, she cries herself to sleep some nights. That neighbor with the beautiful home, he's drowning in debt. That woman who looks like she never ages, she fights insecurities you know nothing about. No one's life is perfect, no one is without pain. So let me ask you, are you comparing yourself to others? Are you letting someone else's carefully edited story make you feel like your own life isn't good enough? If so, stop. Look at your own life, with love, with gratitude, with appreciation for all that you have instead of all that you don't, because at the end of the day, the only person you should be competing with is the person you were yesterday. I know this is a hard habit to break, we've all done it, but I want to hear from you. Have you ever struggled with comparison? What's one thing in your life that you are truly grateful for today? Leave a comment below. Because sometimes all it takes is one shift in perspective to realize you were never missing anything at all. 5. Staying calm in all situations. The great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The American writer Will Rogers famously said, "People who fly into a rage always make a bad landing." And from the Bible, Proverbs 14:29 reminds us, "Whoever is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly." For centuries, the wisest minds have taught that anger is a fire that consumes only the one who carries it. Yet in today's fast-paced, stressful world, many people let their emotions control them. And no one understood this better than Martin. Martin had always been a good man, a hard-working father, a dedicated husband, and now, in his late 70s, a grandfather. But Martin had one problem: his temper. It was never violent, but it was sharp. When something annoyed him, he snapped. When someone disagreed with him, his voice grew louder. For most of his life he had excused it. "I'm just direct, people need to hear the truth. If they don't like it, that's their problem." But as the years passed, something happened that Martin never expected. People stopped arguing with him. At first he thought he had won. His children stopped debating him. His grandchildren grew quiet when he spoke. But then, one day, at a family dinner, he noticed something else. His grandson asked his father a question, but not him. His son-in-law laughed at a joke, but barely looked in Martin's direction. And his daughter, who used to share every detail of her life with him, now spoke in short, polite sentences. The house was full of people, but Martin had never felt lonelier. That night, Martin's wife Ellen said something that shook him to his core. "Do you realize how much quieter the house is when you leave the room?" Martin frowned. "What do you mean?" Ellen sighed. "They love you, Martin, but they are afraid of you." "Afraid?" The word hit him like a punch to the gut. "That's ridiculous," he muttered. "I've never laid a hand on anyone." "It's not your hands, Martin," Ellen said gently. "It's your words, your anger. No one wants to be around someone who always makes them feel small." Martin sat in silence, for the first time truly hearing what was being said. He thought of his own father, a man who ruled his house with fear. He had promised himself he'd never be like him, yet here he was, watching his family pull away, just like he had pulled away from his own father. That night he barely slept, and by morning he made a decision. It was time to change. Change wasn't easy. The first time his grandson accidentally spilled a drink, Martin felt the anger rise. He wanted to bark, "Be more careful!" but he stopped. He took a breath, he counted to 5, and instead he simply said, "It's all right, kiddo, let's clean it up together." His grandson looked at him in surprise, but then he smiled. The first time his son-in-law expressed an opinion he didn't agree with, Martin clenched his jaw, ready to argue. But then he remembered what Ellen had said, so instead he asked, "Why do you feel that way?" And for the first time in years his son-in-law actually looked happy to have a conversation with him. Little by little, Martin learned that not every battle needed to be fought, not every mistake needed to be corrected, not every disagreement needed to be an argument. And something strange happened. The house no longer grew quiet when he entered. His grandchildren started seeking him out, asking for advice, hugging him more. His daughter started telling him about her life again, and at their next family dinner his grandson looked at him and said, "Grandpa, I like it when you're happy." And Martin realized he liked it too. Martin's story is one we see everywhere today. Turn on the news, people are screaming at each other. Go online, arguments rage over the smallest things. Even families, brothers stop speaking, parents argue with their children, and friendships fall apart. Why? Because no one pauses, no one listens, no one asks, "Is this fight really worth it?" But here's the truth, anger is easy. It takes real strength to be calm, to be patient, to choose peace over pride. So let me ask you, are you letting small things steal your happiness? Are you pushing people away without realizing it? If so, you're not alone. But here's the good news, it's never too late to change. Take a breath, let go of the little things, choose peace. Because at the end of the day, no one will remember how right you were in an argument, but they will remember how you made them feel. I know this isn't easy. We all have regrets. We've all lost our temper. We've all said things we wish we could take back. But the question is, what will you do differently starting today? Have you ever struggled with keeping your emotions in check? What's one thing that has helped you stay calm in tough situations? Leave a comment below, because sometimes all it takes is one small change to bring the people we love back into our lives. 6. Embracing aging with a positive mindset. The great American poet Maya Angelou once said, "If you're always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be." The Chinese philosopher Confucius taught, "We have 2 lives, and the second one begins when we realize we only have one." And the Roman philosopher Cicero wrote, "Old age, the crown of life, our play's last act, which some take nobly, others refuse to take." For centuries, wise minds have reminded us that aging is not an end, it is a new beginning. Yet, in today's world, too many people see growing older as a slow fade, instead of what it truly is, a chance to finally live freely. And no one knew this better than Eleanor. Eleanor had always been a practical woman. She was responsible, reliable, and did what was expected of her. She raised her children with love, took care of her husband, managed a household, paid the bills, and cooked the meals. For decades, she put everyone first. And then, one day, she turned 70. There was no grand event, no moment of realization, just a quiet morning, a cup of coffee, and an uncomfortable thought. Now what? Her children had their own lives. Her husband passed away a few years ago. The house, once filled with energy, was silent. And Eleanor, who had spent a lifetime making sure everything was in order, suddenly felt lost. She wasn't sick, she wasn't struggling, but she wasn't living, either. One afternoon, an old friend, Rose, came by for tea. Rose was the same age as Eleanor, but completely different. She had just returned from a trip to Mexico. She was learning Spanish. She had signed up for a local dance class, even though, as she admitted with a laugh, "I have 2 left feet." Eleanor listened, fascinated. "Rose," she said finally, "how do you still have so much energy?" Rose smiled. "Because I don't let age define me." She leaned forward and took Eleanor's hand. "You've spent your whole life taking care of others, but have you ever asked yourself, What do you actually want? Eleanor opened her mouth to answer and realized she didn't know. That night, Eleanor sat in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about the books she had always wanted to read but never had time for, the places she had dreamed of visiting but always put off, the hobbies she used to love, painting, music, gardening, things she had abandoned long ago. And a small, simple thought came to her: why not? The next morning, Eleanor did something she hadn't done in years. She signed up for something just for herself, a local writing class. It wasn't much, just a small group of people, some older, some younger, sitting around and sharing their stories. At first, she felt out of place. I'm too old to be doing this. But by the end of the first session, she realized something incredible. She was enjoying herself. For the first time in years, she felt excited about something, and that excitement turned into action. She traveled, nothing extravagant, just little weekend trips to places she had never been. She made new friends, people she never would have met if she had stayed in her routine. She let go of regret, realizing that the only thing stopping her from living was herself. And one day, while looking in the mirror, she saw something different. Not just wrinkles, not just gray hair. She saw a woman who was truly alive. Eleanor's story is not unique. Too many people reach a certain age and think, it's too late for me. Too many people believe that aging means shrinking their world, giving up joy and becoming invisible. But the truth is, aging is a privilege. Not everyone gets to grow old, and those who do have a choice to exist or to live. So let me ask you, are you embracing aging with a positive mindset, or are you letting fear, regret, or society's expectations hold you back? Because here's the truth, you are never too old to start something new. You are never too old to travel, to learn, to laugh, to love, or to truly live. Your story is not over. In fact, it might just be getting started. I know this isn't easy. We all struggle with the idea of getting older. But I want to hear from you. What's something new you've tried recently? Or what's something you've always wanted to do, but haven't done yet? Leave a comment below. Because sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one decision, one moment of courage to remind yourself the best years of your life are still ahead. Aging is not about counting the years, it's about making the years count. You have spent so much of your life giving, building, and caring for others, but now it's your turn. Your turn to explore, to learn, to laugh, to truly live. Because time is not something we lose, it's something we choose. So what will you choose today? If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what's one thing you're excited to do in this next chapter of life. Because the best time to start is now. Life doesn't slow down, it changes. And with change comes a choice, to watch time pass or to make the most of it. You've given, you've sacrificed, you've loved. Now it's your turn. Your turn to explore, to dream, to rediscover what makes you feel alive. Because aging isn't about losing time, it's about making every moment matter. So what's one thing you'll do today just for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share, because someone else out there needs this reminder too. The best years aren't behind you, they're waiting for you to claim them.